second FIDE Grand Prix tournament began yesterday, Tuesday, in Tashkent. You'll remember the tournament in Baku has only just finished, and there Caruana and Gelfand tied for first. At the end of these four Grand Prix tournaments, there's a big prize. The top two players will qualify for the Candidates Tournament, which will decide the challenger for the next World Championship match in 2016. The game I'd like to cover from round one of the Tashkent Grand Prix tournament is the encounter between Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Now, Vachier-Lagrave did not play in Baku, so he'll play the next three tournaments. And of course, he is on great form. He's one of the younger generation of players that might have a chance to challenge for the world title over the next few years. Now, I'm skipping through these first few moves very quickly. You can see that Vachier-Lagrave has played his favourite Najdorf variation, and Caruana has played his favourite Bishop E3 English attack system. This is a very heavy theoretical line. Both players know this very well. You remember that Caruana played this English attack against Gelfand in Baku, and that game ended in a draw. Caruana has often played this English attack, but he's had really mixed results with it. He's won a couple of games, but in the past he's lost against Dominguez, against Topalov, against Gelfand, against Nakamura. So, well, he's clearly believes in it for white. And this is a very important position. Here the old main line, which Caruana has tried, and with, I'm afraid, not successfully against Gelfand in 2013. The old main line is G5, but it's been known that actually this whole variation is satisfactory for black. It's very complicated, but should be fine for black, and Caruana lost to Gelfand, as I said. Rook G1 is a subtle move, waiting to see how black commits himself on the queen side before possibly pushing forward with G5. Okay, knight B6, and now knight A5. And this is a very common idea, that the knight tries to come in here, possibly supported by a knight coming to D5. If there's a pawn there, then of course the knight on C6 will have support. The knight is pushed away. That's all very subtle. Now, this is actually a well-known position. Anand won a very nice game against Topalov in Norway Chess 2013. And there Toppy played knight F4. And, well, the game went on like this, but, well, Anand controlled a very nice game. So Queen C7 is MVL's improvement. Okay, looks pretty normal move, establishing pressure on the c-file, typical Sicilian move, but it's all in the detail. Actually, there's some interesting tactics now. If white plays, let's say, h4, and this has actually been played, then d5 is a strong move. Now you can see that black is exploiting the fact that this c2 pawn isn't well protected. So after white takes here, you'll notice that that bishop can't be taken. Well, I think you can take on c2 with check and then play rook here. Yeah, that'll do. That should win. And d1 is hanging. Let's go back. And after black breaks with d5, this is, well, black has really pleasant play. That knight on a5 is rather stranded. So this is a kind of threat, actually, to play d5. So understandably, knight d5 happened from Caruana. And now some tactics. You can see the knight on a5 was hanging, and the queen has moved away from its protection. And this is actually a well-known position. They've transposed to a line that's previously been played. So, for example, Rook G4 has been played here with white, and there have been a few games with this. And okay, the queen comes back here, attacking the pawn, and well, white has reasonable compensation for the pawn because he has control over these central light squares, but it's also actually decent for black as well, because this knight is going to come back into the middle and black is solid enough here. Caruana played here bishop d3, also a reasonable move, and g6, and again rook g4 I think is quite a reasonable move. But c4 was played by Caruana, so this is an attempt to take back this pawn. Obviously there's a pin here. The knight came in. This was exchanged off. Now you can see that this opens up this long diagonal, and as this pawn is advanced, black would very much like to bring this bishop round, perhaps via f8 to g7, and we'll see that this plays an important part in the game later. Caruana exchanges on b5, so wins his pawn back. And now queen a7. So the position is kind of cleared. We can sum things up. In fact, I think this has turned out very well for black. I always like to compare the position of the two kings. You can see that black's king is actually very safe in this position. There's no open files against the king. But look at white's king. If black can get some pressure down the b file, then it could be in trouble. There's the open a file as well. And white's pawns on the king side are also rather split, not very well positioned. But I think it's going to be key for black if he can bring this bishop to the long diagonal to attack b2. But all in all, I think this has turned out well for MVL. Bishop e4. Okay, reasonable move, putting the bishop on a nice diagonal. Rook c7, that's preparing to bring this one across. Now, rook b8 is quite possible. I think this is quite a reasonable way to play, followed by bringing the bishop round, and I prefer black's position, to be honest. But Maxime played a very cheeky move indeed, queen f2. And the purpose is just to take one of these pawns on the king side. It's remarkable that black has enough time to do this, but let's see. If h3 trying to defend this pawn, actually black can just take this one, because if this is taken, then obviously there's a problem on the back rank. Queen b3 was played to cover the c2 square. And Maxime just took this pawn on h2. The queen is safe. So why is this pawn important? Well, it means that this one is weaker. Obviously this can't now be protected by h4. And all the endgames are suddenly going to be rather difficult for white, as we'll see. Okay, Caruana has a trump, and that's these queenside pawns, so perhaps he can advance them to get counterplay. But let's see. Actually, black can control these pawns very easily. Rook a7, so not only holding back the pawns, but also white still has to be careful about what's happening with his king. So this queen is floating around in the middle, keeping up the pressure. Obviously there's a threat to play this, so that's why that one was played. And the queen comes back, bit of pressure here. And be careful, there are going to be some threats on f7, that's why this isn't possible. So king g7 looks like a very normal move. Rook c8. And this endgame is going to be really nice for black, because white's pawns are going nowhere, but black has a serious clump of pawns on the king side. Now I think that Caruana should have just started hassling the queen here and driving it back. I think black is still better here, but I think this would be white's best chance. Instead, he played rook g2, and now an excellent move from MVL. He played d5. This basically is just an exchange of pawns, but it really helps black. If white goes in for an endgame, then this is clear advantage to black. Extra pawn and a strong extra pawn on the king side, and still chances to attack the king. If rook takes, then there is trouble here. The queen comes back, and yeah, these pins, there's so much pressure here. This is very, very awkward. If nothing else, you take this pawn, and yeah, better for black. So bishop d5, and now it just means we've had a trade of pawns, but having got rid of this one, the bishop is now able to come back to this superb diagonal, and this adds to white's problems. And don't forget this beautiful, these beautiful 4 pawns on the king side waiting to advance as well, and this just turned out perfectly. We can see how dangerous the position is for white's king if the king just nudges up, and suddenly, well, this is a fatal attack on the a file. So rook e4. Now, I mean, black could just advance the pawns with h5 here, but it's very interesting to see how Vachier-Lagrave exploited his advantage. Basically, he just traded all the pieces here. He just traded rooks. Now, one might imagine that with bishops of opposite colour, that this increases white's drawing chances, but not a bit of it. This is really fine judgment. The problem is that white's bishop can't really defend on the king side. So, for example, if these pawns race, then this bishop plays no part, and actually black can defend very easily with his bishop, and this is just, well, it should be a winning position for black actually. And there are also chances to attack this pawn too, so white is basically overloaded here. Actually, fantastic judgment from the Frenchman. Black is winning here. Caruana traded queens, but it made no difference. Here, the pawns on the king side are simply too strong. Caruana gave up the b pawn now, but I don't think it makes any difference what he does. He could play king d3 here, but actually just simply pushing these pawns is going to win, and now the king will advance and can support these pawns up the board, you know, maybe come to g3, and these pawns are obviously going nowhere. In the game, b6 happened, but now this is a really simple win for black. The pawns just advance on the king side, and it's gone completely. Caruana resigned in this position. Really, there's no defence to the advance of h and g pawns, and then that one goes through. So a very smooth victory from Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. It was actually his birthday yesterday. He turned 24, so a very nice birthday present for him. You know, he's obviously on great form. At Sinquefield Cup in September, he was a little bit shaky. Obviously, an incredibly strong tournament, but still, this year has been a great year for him. So, well, we await with interest what's going to happen in the Grand Prix in Tashkent. Disappointing result for Caruana. He was shaky at the end of Baku. Maybe he's getting tired. He's played so much this year. But let's see. It's only round 1. Long way to go. 11 rounds to play in total.